So I found this article at LA Taco. Usually I don't. Usually I just like to cover economics, politics, and stuff like that. This is a kind of like a local issue. However, I thought it's interesting because it's at an intersection of some things that I'm really into. Really into real estate, and I'm really into following the whole gentrification battles and quote unquote anti gentrification activists that were quote unquote defending these cities. Usually they were pretty hardcore socialists or communists, and just reading their Twitter posts and everything, it kind of intrigued me because I was just trying to dive into their psychology, which is really bizarre to me, but at the same time interesting, just like I'm interested in Jacobin. So this girl writes this article, and it's about Los Angeles and how, well, the whole premise is clearly she's on the left, and the whole thing about the left is you're supposed to notice your privileges. But being a person of color, she too wanted to play the game, meaning that, oh, well, a person of color, she has a white boyfriend, maybe she's light skinned, maybe she has a college educated or like a middle class job, so she too wants to get brownie points for calling out her privilege because she was apartment shopping in Los Angeles, and basically she was quote unquote making the people, or like some of the local Hispanic people, maybe a little nervous. Taking in this article, she was taking some shots at white people, white gentrifiers who are, in her eyes, clueless or privileged assholes, displacing working class people. And the more interesting fact about this article is this: it's like my previous video about Jacobin author, socialist author, complaining about everything's becoming political. Yeah, he's writing for a political magazine, advocating for politics in every inch of your life. Here we go with this person. I mean, bringing politics even into, or in politics and race, into a place where you want to live. I mean, turning the whole concept of diversity that they quote unquote champion upside down. I mean, really, to me, they're saying, hey, diversity is our strength. Diversity is so good. The more diverse the place, the better experience, the culture, this and this, that, and the other. Yet they're so obsessed about race and what race of people are moving into each house. How does that rub certain people the wrong way? How does it? Are you displacing people? Are you causing rents to go up? If you move into this neighborhood, are you really going to embrace the local Hispanic culture, or just take advantage of the free rent? How are you worthy enough of? Are they accepting you into their culture? Like, it's. I mean, this is almost borderline mental insanity. It's a mental issue, right? You can go crazy. It's like you're taking all the fun and just taking all the fun out of life, taking all the excitement. You're making everything political, everything racial, and just it's just like everything. It's like you're living with a mental condition like OCD. It's like if you view everything from that lens. To me, it's really dystopian, really grim. Like, if you think like them, then there's no limit to the problems your existence causes. For example, you go to a used car dealership, or because if you don't buy a certain car, well, maybe the dealership has to mark down the price, and then a person of color can buy it. So, but look, you bought this car, so therefore the car's not cheaper for somebody else. Or that you're buying certain things at a grocery store, therefore it's like this crazy zero-sum mentality that, if you move into this neighborhood, you displacing other people. Well, if a unit is available, the landlord is going to try to want the highest price for it. And if you're paying a higher price, if you're the the person that wants to pay the higher price, that's fine. I mean, just the over politicization of this. It's like, yeah, neighborhoods they change demographics. Some neighborhoods that have higher crime rates, they improve, and the kids living in that neighborhood that are not displaced, most people aren't displaced, actually get a better experience, maybe a better school, less crime. They have diverse friends, and it's almost as she's taking like these shots of like, oh, white people being colonialists or whatever. That's like the undertone of this article. But if you just think about it, there's plenty of empty, unused land in Mexico. But the land in LA is so valuable. Why? Well, because of all these other races that came here and developed this land from empty, barren desert land with palm trees. Or I don't know, I take that back. I don't know how many. There might be only one native species palm trees in actual Los Angeles. But basically barren land. Silicon Valley, Hollywood, all these type of people from all over the world came there to make it a really bustling, productive city. That's why people want to live there, for the opportunity. But you're just caught into this one little sliver that, oh, like the more people that live here, their demographics are not good. You're displacing, old, lower income renters, and this place used to be Hispanic, and they shot these Hispanic movies here. Now, yes, there's less Hispanic people living here, and then just crazy, just like this crazy moral system. And in reality, every single citizen is well, I wouldn't say every single, but the more people live in an area, the more just demographically the economics improve, because every person is basically working, contributing to society, contributing to the growth. So it just all the people that actually moved to Los Angeles, that's what makes it so dynamic. That's why other people want to live there, because there's so many jobs. People move in there, start businesses, create jobs. But yeah, she just that's not completely, that she doesn't even think about it at all. She only thinks about it as a zero-sum game. Like a lot of leftists do. They fall into that trap, the zero-sum. They think that everything in this world, all the wealth, all the private property, everything, there's only a fixed amount of that. And if somebody gets something, that means somebody else will get less. If somebody moves into this apartment, well, there are no more apartments, and then that person has to move out of the city. I mean, in reality, the real issue is, like everything else, government, it's zoning. Because all of LA is basically zoned for single-family houses. You can't build 4 units. You can't build apartments. They put it, even the apartments that do get built, they have to have parking minimums that add $60,000, to each unit. Height requirements, all this on and on, and labor regulation that adds to the cost of the building. Well, the zoning codes made LA a pressure cooker. Well, there are a very limited amount of apartments, and on top of that, you slap rent control, so most people never leaving these cheap units that they're grandfathered in. So the few units that are available, the price is sky high, and it's competitive, and there's so much resentment. And the solution obviously would be increase the zoning. Let people build. Let people build even cheaper. Let people build cheap entry level homes, like they used to be able to. And just in another way too, like one way to think about it would be, hey, if you're a white person or you're a person from a different ethnicity, well, you're moving into a Hispanic neighborhood. Well, that, hey, man, a lot of the people that you know, or your friends, they're intolerant, or they might think that neighborhood is dirty or crime ridden or whatever. But like, hey, man, you actually like the culture. You're cool, you know. You like living in the Bay Area or whatever. So you should be seen as like a more tolerant person, a person that likes a certain culture. You like Hispanic restaurants. You want to go to their grocery store. You want to go to their bars and hang out with them. So you should be seen as a more tolerant person, that you like other cultures and not stick to your like white neighborhoods. But they turning that concept on its head to where the tolerant people that actually do want to live in a Hispanic neighborhood, well, they're actually the Christopher Columbuses. They're the gentrifiers. They are, they are the conquerors. And the good white people, oh yeah, no, they just stay in their own white little neighborhood, which is completely opposite. So fucked up. I'll try to skim through some of this article. There isn't anything to highlight per se, but all of it is just, my God. This is like basically like the egg on the frying pan. Like, this is your brain on leftism. Are you a gentrifier or a gentrifier? I think she means gentrifier. I think she means a Mexican gentrifier, Hispanic. Have you ever stopped to confront and reflect this on question as a person living in Los Angeles? I recently asked myself, this is while apartment hunting. For context, I'm a daughter of a working-class Mexican immigrant and a Salvadoran refugee born and raised in Los Angeles County, and I still have to ask myself this hard question when I look into renting an apartment in LA. Just how messed up is that? You want to live in a certain neighborhood, but then you have to, for context, you have to explain somebody your ethnicity, your race, your background, because otherwise other people can judge that, say, hey, you don't have the appropriate race or the skin color or the background to live here. And if you don't, well, you gotta jump through all these hoops. You gotta really appreciate our culture. You gotta do this, that, and that. You gotta prove to us. That you're worthy of living in this neighborhood, which is so messed up, because that goes against what you're preaching. You're preaching your diversity is our strength. Asking if someone is a gentrifier is akin to ask someone if they're privileged. Here we go. Being called privileged seems to be an affront nowadays in American society. Well, yeah. Unless you're calling yourself privileged, that means you're just humble bragging, or you're doing the whatever leftists do. You're putting yourself down in order to elevate your status. Looks like the equity gaps between white American and Americans of color are being brought under brighter spotlight during this pandemic. Well, what does that have to do with you? If you take all the white Americans, if you take quote-unquote white Americans, that includes so many people from so many different backgrounds, and you take all the quote-unquote people of color, which includes Asians, which are the most with the biggest number of those people on the earth, and then you add up millions upon millions and millions upon millions of people, and then there's some kind of income gap between those people, and then that, like, the cosmological justice is wrong. So there's like an abstract sense to where it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what does that have to do with you? What does that have to do with, yes, of course, if you group any large amount of people together, there will be a difference in anything. You can group left-handed people and right-handed people, and then there's probably going to be a wage gap. So, but what does that have to do with your apartment hunting? When I asked myself if I was a gentrifier this last fall when looking for a one-bedroom apartment in LA under $1,800, a high budget for anyone, especially a millennial, I thought of my upbringing a lot. The neighborhoods we could afford within this price range were South Central, Koreatown, Mid-City, Northeast LA, all communities of color currently facing gentrification. No, the no-go zones, basically. It's not a community. It basically, LA prices are super high, rental prices. So people take refuge in cheaper areas. It's not that they're, minority neighborhoods are specifically targeted. I mean, I would say that most white people just want to live in a white neighborhood, actually. That would be their revealed preference if all the rents were the same. But they're just, the LA is a rental pressure cooker because of zoning, so people are forced to adapt the way they can. These neighborhoods aren't new to me, but they're also never been my home. Growing up in the 90s during the turn of the new millennium, I would visit my family living South Central in Boyle Heights, while my immediate family lived in our modest home in South Whittier. Just goes into some history where she lived. Again, this question of being a gentrifier was brought up when apartment hunting. Every viewing I went to with my boyfriend in Mid-City in Northeast LA was filled with at least 10 other white hipsters competitively applying for the same rental. Most of them looked like influencers. That's funny. Like, why, what other ethnic group can you just say, hey, I saw a bunch of X ethnic group. A lot of them look like taco truck drivers, like whatever. Well, how is that appropriate? I mean, and the thing is, she considers herself to be very self-aware. But a whole group of people, you would just like, oh yeah, you look like whatever, I would be the only person of color at these viewings. Once there was another black woman among us, but that was only the occasion that happened. Given that I was at these viewings with my white boyfriend, that I'm a light-skinned Latinx, I started wondering, am I just a white as affluent these folks now? Am I a gentrifier? Dum dum dum. One rental viewing in particular solidified that I may be a gentrifier. I was with my boyfriend. I saw a closet of an apartment rental in a triplex style house right by Echo Park. Lake going for $1,800. No parking, no laundry. Not much privacy from the house neighbors who were all working class, brown, mostly spoke Spanish, but just like my entire family. Saw a Catholic cross hanging on the door of my neighbor's unit in the hallway, and it was reminded of similar living decor across my childhood. Saw a blow-up jumper, blah, 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 blah. Basically, she just spends a whole bunch of paragraphs saying that there was a older Mexican gentleman that she scared, and she thinks she scared him because her and her boyfriend are considered white, and she was trying to nod to him like, hey, I'm one of the good guys. Don't be afraid of me. I'm not white. I'm not going to kick you out. I'm going to try to help you as any way I can. I'm not going to displace you. I'm just going to get this rental unit next to you. I acknowledge this concern. Even the rest of the white hipsters among us didn't. They likely don't notice him or saw him and ignored him. We didn't get approved for that apartment, just like we didn't get any other rentals we applied for in the city. This is a harsh reminder of just how competitive the housing market is. With our lease ending soon, we began to worry. Couldn't find a place to live in time. Then our friend who grew up in the San Gabriel Valley suggested Alhambra or Monterey Park. Yeah, so she goes about the ethnicity of those neighborhoods, and if they're Asian, and is it possible that she can move in there because of her ethnic status? Oh, here we go. If you're reading from an iPhone, you're also part of the larger issue encompassed by a society that globally exploits a workforce, primarily people of color. even if you're not in your intention. You too are a sinner, but you too can be saved. Well, no, she doesn't say that. Just says repent, feel bad about yourself. You are using a piece of technology, even though probably if your iPhone was assembled in China, it does make the Chinese wages actually go up by having them jobs. Even if the people don't even work in that factory directly, if there's a higher demand for Chinese labor, well, that's raising their standard of living. But this person can't be bothered with any kind of economic knowledge. No. They're subsumed by the woke religion. So you must feel bad about yourself. Even you, hey, you watching on your iPhone. I know what I can do, and that's to offer my solidarity and support as a neighbor. This only looks like using my privilege to be an advocate for the improvement of my neighbor's lives, sharing my resources. Whether that's financial, intellectual, social, something else. I call bullshit. She never fucking shared any kind of resources. We gotta offer... Sounds like bullshit. What? Why not? Why? You're saying that white hipsters that move in, they don't patronize the local restaurants and grocery stores and actually add, probably even drop more money than the previous tenants, therefore boosting the economy. I mean, it's a complicated picture. Yeah, neighborhoods do change, but some of the restaurants that stay the same, wow, they make so much more money. A lot of the landlords are Hispanic in those Hispanic neighborhoods. They make a lot more money. If the crime goes down, a lot of kids' lives are saved. They don't get shot, which is funny because I think back in the day that's how the left wanted to fix ghettos. The left actually tried to. They knew that the housing projects were just full of poor people, and then they saw that it was a disaster. That's why they tried to actually, unsuccessfully, the program failed, but they actually tried to move in some middle-class families, try to make it seem like, or try to diversify the areas as far as income, try to get some good influences to that neighborhood. It's the lack of these tangible supports that has been the greatest sin of gentrification. The act of taking land, in this case under the guise of real estate. Yes, you're just like Christopher Columbus, or you're just like Magellan, that sailed across the sea and took somebody's land by renting or buying a house from the previous owner and not giving back anything original occupants of that land. In this case, established BIPOC community, and systemically forcing those original occupants off that land to leave. What does this remind you of? Well, I mean, she fails to mention so many things. A lot of these neighborhoods, before they're Hispanic, they're actually Russian and Jewish, Italian neighborhoods anyway. So what happened to those tenants that were forced off their land? Like 1 and 2... Oh shit, I forgot my other point. I'm sure it'll come back to me. BIPOC have been at the receiving end of such generational shift, end of their stick for so long. We can call it when we see it, even if it's coming from a well-intentioned white hipster who loves diversity as an aesthetic but doesn't actually engage it intimately enough to bring it inside their home. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? You love diversity, you move into a Hispanic neighborhood, but that's not good enough. You're not pure enough. You must repent for your sins. So I may be just gentrifier, but I pride myself in being a good neighbor, and I might not have all the answers for gentrification. Oh yeah, that's the point I was saying. This article does not ever once mention zoning. Does not mention the issue why people are fighting for these, or rent control, why is there a housing crisis, why is there a social shortage, why are these people cramped? like a family of 6 or 7 would be living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and that's like the whole apartment would be like that, and all apartments are looking like dilapidated, like they're falling down, and people with good middle class jobs have to move to these quote unquote BIPOC communities. It completes, like, just lacks context. The only substance of this article is just about feeling guilty for being a human being, feeling guilty about being a certain race, because you can't live up. You're born in the wrong race. You moved to the wrong neighborhood. You're not bringing the culture into your into your house properly. You're kicking people off their land. You're doing this, that, and the other. So I may just be a gentrifier. I pride myself on being a good neighbor. I may not have all the answers for gentrification, but I think I'll be a good neighbor is to seek the improvement of your fellow neighbors' lives, just like you would your own. And I'm sure Mr. Rogers would agree. That's funny. She tried to strike a conciliatory tone here. But what being a good neighbor is basically just having a job, being a productive member of society, trading your time and services for money. But you would have to know a tad bit of economics to understand that.